Hey everybody, so today what we're going to do is we are going to start by going over what you need in order to grind stone dental models. So over here I do have a case tray pan and I filled it with some water, and what you want to do is you want to start to get your models soaking. You can see all those bubbles kind of rising to the surface, and this is going to help soften our stone. While those are soaking, we'll go over the rest of the materials you'll need today. So you will need some form of eyewear or face shield. You'll need a pencil. You'll need a lab knife. It is not necessary, but if you'd like to, you can wear a pair of gloves. I do find that it helps keep your hands a little bit cleaner and underneath your fingernails a little bit cleaner as well. And in terms of personal protective equipment, you are going to need your lab coat to protect you from getting spills and splashes on yourself. And then you'll also need a form of wipeable shoe wear, just in case you get any of that liquidy kind of stone on your shoes. The last thing that you're going to need to trim up your stone dental model is a trimmer. This trimmer here has a separate water and power function. So when you're ready to start grinding your models, you're going to want to ensure that the water is turned in the on position. Turning it in the on position means rotating the lever so that it's running parallel with the tubing. This would be an off position. So we're gonna turn it on. Once we turn the water on, we're going to make sure that our plate is parallel with the floor. If any adjustments need to be made, you can rotate the lever here to move it up or down however you need to. There's also markings on this plate as well. The center indicates the midline, and there's also degree markings here, 80, 70, and 60. The last thing we need to do in order to operate the machine is to flip the power switch in the back on. And when that starts happening, the water will automatically start coming down the side of the wheel and exiting through the tube in the sink. Once you've determined that you have an adequate amount of water flow, you're ready to start grinding your models. When you're ready to start grinding your first model, you're going to go ahead and remove it from the water. Now, I do recommend starting with the maxillary model. What we're gonna be doing is, first thing is we're gonna line up the occlusal edges of the teeth with something that's flat and parallel with the floor. So I'm going to use the countertop. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look from right to left to make sure that this model is nice and even. And when we look at this, it does have a little bit of a lean, and you can see that we're gonna take more off the patient's right side here to make sure that our base is nice and even. So we're gonna go ahead and bring this to the model trimmer and do that. So we're gonna start by trimming the heel of the model here, and I'm gonna put a little bit more pressure onto the patient's right, but my left hand, and this is gonna help us even out the base of the models. To me, it's kind of coming over a little bit too much on this side, so I'm going to take a little bit more off. And that looks pretty darn good. After you've leveled out your stone model, what you're going to want to do is draw a few lines to help you out, especially if you're a beginner. So I like to line the midline of my teeth up with the midline of my model trimmer, and it just kind of helps me to go down to know that I'm right here at the midline. The other thing you want to do that's helpful is to draw a line right down the center of your model. A rough estimate is totally fine because I am not an artist. So you're going to go right down the middle here. And that's just going to help you a little bit later on. The other thing you're gonna wanna mark maybe is an area behind the teeth. You wanna make sure that you have enough of the retromolar pad here. So we're probably gonna make a rough cut maybe like here. And this cut is gonna be perpendicular to the cut on the midline. The last thing I sometimes like to mark too are my canine teeth, just because these guys are pretty important when we are going to be cutting a little bit later on. And as you get better at this, you really don't have to draw too much, but I do find that this can be helpful. So the first cut we're gonna make is going to be a cut that is perpendicular to the midline. You do wanna make sure that you keep the area of the retromolar pad intact or any area behind the terminal molar. And I do think it is helpful to line up your teeth with the midline on the grinder. That's gonna help you keep a nice, even base. So we're gonna apply even pressure. We're already starting to form our angle here. We're going to do it just a little bit more here. All right, so that looks nice. So the next cut we are going to want to make are going to be our lateral cuts. Now, our lateral cuts are not going to extend into this vestibule. We do want to kind of keep this intact because that is going to show the patient's anatomy. And you do want your lateral cuts to be lined up, kind of running parallel with the central grooves of the teeth. So we can see that the teeth go this way. So your cut's going to go something like this here. And you can even, if you need to, like kind of draw yourself a rough line. Same thing on this side. Our lateral cut, you can see our teeth are going to go this way, and our cut is going to go right here. So the nice thing about the grinder is that you can actually utilize these angle markings to your advantage because you can keep your heel cut at an 80-degree angle, and this will allow you to make that lateral cut and have it run nice and parallel with the central grooves of the teeth. So we'll go ahead and we'll apply even pressure, doing our best to stay at the 80-degree angle. And remember, you're going to cut all the way until you get nice and close to that vestibule, and then you're going to go ahead and stop. So we'll stop because less is more. And we'll check that angle. That looks pretty good. So then we'll line up the heel again to the 80-degree mark on the other side, and we'll go ahead and we'll start applying even pressure. Again, we're going to go right up to the vestibule. So now your cuts kind of look something like this. So now we're ready to move on to our anterior cut. And the anterior cut is going to go from canine to the maxillary central right to the midline. And it's going to look something like this. And so what's going to happen is this model is actually going to come kind of to like a little peak here, hopefully right at the midline. One way to kind of achieve this is to rest your model on the base plate, line up your lateral cut with the 80-degree mark, and we're going to go ahead and apply even pressure soft, so we're ready to use our lab knife later. And we're gonna start to do the same process that we did with the maxillary teeth, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna check the mandibular teeth. So we'll go ahead and we'll get down nice and level. And this guy is off just by a little bit. So we'll go ahead, it looks like it's skewing a little bit this way. So I think we'll need to take a little bit off there. So let's go ahead and place this on our grinder and let's start to get this leveled. That was pretty good. So we'll go ahead and we'll keep that there. And we're going to take our maxillary impression out of the water, and we're going to occlude the two models. And you can either occlude the two models until they naturally come together, or you can use the bite registration that the patient has with their models. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start to do the back cut here. So I'm going to rest the models down on the base plate so that they're nice and firm. And I'm going to grasp the models as firmly as I can. And I'm going to start to apply pressure evenly. The other thing you want to double check is that your teeth are at the midline. And so I'm actually going to even draw myself something that'll help me, just so I know I can stay right at the midline. And you'll start grinding back. And as you can see, I'm getting closer and closer to the wheel. Once you start to get really close to occluding on the top, you are going to want to take your model and check to make sure that you're not taking off too much material here on the back. And we still have a little bit of room to go here, so we're going to keep going. I'm going to rest my model back down flat. Apply even pressure. Now both of my models are touching the grinder, so I'm going to take them off and just double check that we're at where we need to be, and this looks great. So we're going to occlude the models back together, and now we're going to make our side cut here. So again, just kind of lining up the heel at 80 degrees. Go ahead and hold that there for just a minute, and let's do the other side. All right, we're gonna hold that there for just a minute. To do is we are going to round out this edge here. Now it is a little bit bulky, so I am going to take off some material. And if you're a beginner, sometimes you may again want to mark the canines, because this is where we're going to want our rounding to happen. taken off enough of the material in the front, you can go ahead and include your models back together. And we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna round out the front. We'll take it off to make sure we're not taking off too much. Once we've made our rounded cut here, we're going to make our angled cuts in the back. So again, including our models back together, finding that back angle. Nice firm pressure until you meet the back. There we go. And then we're going to flip it around and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Stop and check. Right until we hit. Perfect. So there we have our finished study model. Once you're done grinding your models, you're gonna wanna pop them back into your lab tray. Give them a little jiggle to get any excess material off. You can also use a toothbrush to do this as well. And we're gonna wanna trim off some of this excess material so that we can see the study model a little bit better. And so you will need a laboratory knife to do this. You're gonna wanna use a palm grasp, which means holding the handle of the knife in your palm, wrapping your fingers around it, and using the thumb to kind of guide where the knife is going to be going. So we're gonna start by just taking off a little bit of this edging here. We're just gonna kind of smooth everything down. We're gonna be really careful not to kind of gouge the teeth. So that looks good. And we don't need any other areas to really be adjusted here. And same with this, we can just kind of go along. We can shave off any areas that we need to. And that looks pretty good. So there is our finished study model.